All right, let me start with this. If you've ever scrolled through social media and felt a pit in your stomach because some comment section made you believe you're not enough, or you've wondered whether real-life attraction is secretly measured with a ruler, you're not alone. There is more misinformation floating around about body size and attraction than almost any other topic in health and fitness. And today, I want to cut through all of that noise, the jokes, the exaggerations, the locker room myths, and the internet bravado, and talk about what real science actually says. Not opinions, not viral clips, not adult film standards. Real science. And I'm going to explain this from a urologist's perspective in a way that's honest, respectful, and grounded in human biology and psychology. Because once you understand the truth, a lot of anxiety just melts away. Now, before we go any further, let me say this clearly. This conversation is not about shaming men, judging women, or turning intimacy into a competition. This is about understanding how bodies actually work and what research tells us about satisfaction, comfort, and attraction. Because the biggest lie people believe is that bigger automatically means better, and that belief has caused more insecurity than almost anything else I see in my clinic. So let's talk about where this obsession even comes from. For decades, movies, advertising, and especially adult content have pushed one very narrow idea of what ideal looks like. And when that's the only reference point people see, it starts to feel like reality. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Adult entertainment is not a documentary. It is not designed around comfort, long-term pleasure, or real relationships. It's designed to look dramatic on camera. And the human brain is very good at confusing repetition with truth. When you see something over and over again, your brain starts to assume that's normal, even when it's not. Now let's step into actual science for a moment. When researchers study sexual satisfaction, they don't ask one-dimensional questions. They look at anatomy, nerve distribution, comfort, emotional connection, communication, and overall experience. And when you look at that data as a whole, the story it tells is very different from what the internet would have you believe. First, let's talk anatomy, because this is where reality really starts to ground the conversation. The vaginal canal is not an endless tunnel. In a relaxed state, it averages around 3 to 4 inches in depth. During arousal, it can lengthen somewhat due to something called vaginal tenting, but even then, the most sensitive nerve endings are concentrated in the outer portion, particularly the first couple of inches. That's not opinion, that's anatomy. The highest density of nerve endings responsible for pleasure are not deep inside, they're closer to the entrance. So when people assume that deeper penetration equals more pleasure, that assumption doesn't align with how the nervous system actually works. For many women, too much depth can be uncomfortable or even painful. And in clinical settings, pain during intercourse is one of the most common issues women report, not lack of depth. Too much pressure, too much force, too much discomfort. Now let's look at what women actually report when they're asked directly in anonymous scientific surveys, not in public comment sections where social pressure exists. When researchers ask women about size preference, the most common answer isn't a specific number. It's comfortable, fits well, feels right, or not too big. And when numbers are involved, the averages fall squarely within the normal anatomical range of most men. Multiple studies have found that when women are asked about ideal size for long-term partners, the preference tends to be very close to average. Not extreme, not exaggerated. Average. And there's a big difference between curiosity, fantasy, and what actually works in real life. Just like people might fantasize about extreme scenarios that they wouldn't actually want to live with every day, size discussions online often mix fantasy with reality in a way that creates confusion. Another important piece that almost never gets talked about is context. A short-term fantasy and a long-term partner are not evaluated the same way in the brain. Long-term satisfaction is heavily influenced by trust, communication, emotional safety, and physical comfort. From a medical standpoint, the most fulfilling intimate relationships are the ones where both partners feel relaxed and understood. Anxiety is the enemy of pleasure. And when someone is constantly worried about measurements, that anxiety directly interferes with performance, connection, and enjoyment. Now let's address something that surprises a lot of people. Size has very little correlation with overall sexual satisfaction. That might sound shocking if you've been told the opposite your whole life, but the data is very clear on this. Studies consistently show that factors like foreplay, emotional connection, attentiveness, and communication rank far higher than physical dimensions. In fact, many women report that the ability to listen, adapt, and respond to their partner's needs matters far more than any specific physical trait. Think about it this way. The human body doesn't experience pleasure in isolation. The brain is the largest sex organ. If someone feels safe, desired, and emotionally connected, their nervous system is more receptive to pleasure. If someone feels pressured, uncomfortable, or insecure, their body goes into a defensive state, and no amount of physical size can override that biological response. Now let's talk about the urologist's perspective specifically. In medicine, we see the full spectrum of reality, not just the highlight reel. We see men who are above average who struggle with relationships and satisfaction, and we see men who are average or below average who have deeply fulfilling intimate lives. The difference is almost never anatomy. It's mindset, communication, and emotional intelligence. One of the most harmful things men internalize is the idea that their worth is tied to a number. That belief doesn't just affect confidence. It affects mental health, stress levels, and even physical performance. Stress increases cortisol. Cortisol interferes with arousal and blood flow. So the irony is that worrying about size often causes more issues than size ever could. Another thing that rarely gets mentioned is adaptability. Human bodies are adaptable. Comfort and pleasure increase with familiarity. Partners learn each other over time. They adjust angles, pace, rhythm, and technique. That learning process is where real satisfaction comes from, not from meeting some arbitrary standards set by strangers on the internet. Let's also talk about variability, because no two people are the same. Just as people have different heights, hand sizes, and foot sizes, preferences vary. There is no universal ideal, and any claim that all women want the same thing immediately collapses under even basic scientific scrutiny. Human attraction is influenced by culture, experience, personality, and individual anatomy. Reducing it to a single measurement ignores the complexity of real relationships. Another crucial point is that penetration is only one part of intimacy, and for many women, it's not even the primary source of pleasure. This isn't a secret. This has been established in research for decades. The majority of women do not reach orgasm from penetration alone. That's not a flaw. That's just how the body works. So when someone focuses exclusively on size, they're focusing on the wrong variable entirely. What matters far more is attentiveness. Does the partner pay attention? Do they respond to feedback? Do they care about their partner's experience? Those questions matter infinitely more than inches. And from a health perspective, intimacy that prioritizes mutual comfort and communication leads to better outcomes emotionally and physically. Now let's address confidence, because this is where everything comes together. Confidence does not come from anatomy. It comes from self-acceptance. When someone is comfortable in their body, they show up differently. They're more present, more relaxed, more connected, and that presence is attractive. Insecure energy is felt immediately, even if no one says it out loud. The most attractive trait, medically speaking, is emotional safety. When someone feels emotionally safe, their body responds positively. Their nervous system relaxes. Blood flow improves. Pleasure increases. That's biology. That's not poetry. And emotional safety has nothing to do with size. I also want to talk directly to men who might be feeling discouraged right now. If you've ever compared yourself to something unrealistic and felt like you don't measure up, understand this. You are comparing real life to fiction. And that comparison is unfair to you. Your body was not designed to meet entertainment standards. It was designed to function, connect, and experience pleasure in a real human context. From a urologist's standpoint, a healthy, intimate life is about function, comfort, and mutual satisfaction. There is a wide range of normal, and the vast majority of men fall well within that range. The idea that most men are somehow inadequate is simply not supported by data. Now let's flip the lens for a moment and talk about women's experiences. Many women report feeling pressure to respond a certain way when size is discussed. Social expectations, fear of judgment, or concern about hurting feelings can influence how people talk publicly. But when researchers remove those pressures and ask privately, the answers become much more grounded and practical. Comfort matters. Trust matters. Being understood matters. And here's something that doesn't get enough attention. Too much size can create real physical issues. Discomfort, pain, tearing, and anxiety are not uncommon. In medicine, we don't romanticize discomfort. We treat it. So the idea that more is always better doesn't just lack evidence. It directly contradicts what clinicians see every day. Let's talk about long-term relationships because that's where reality really shows itself. In long-term partnerships, satisfaction tends to increase when partners feel aligned emotionally and physically. Familiarity breeds comfort, communication deepens, and over time, couples learn what works for them. Size becomes background noise. What matters is connection. I want you to think about how many other aspects of life work this way. Fitness, for example. The most extreme physiques get the most attention online, but they're rarely sustainable or healthy long term. Real fitness is about consistency, balance, and function. Intimacy is no different. The healthiest relationships prioritize sustainability, not extremes. So if you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. Real science does not support the idea that women want extreme size. Real science supports the idea that women want comfort, connection, and confidence. And confidence comes from understanding your body, accepting it, and showing up fully as yourself. This topic gets clicks because it taps into insecurity, but the truth is far more reassuring than the myths. You are not defined by a number. You are defined by how you treat your partner, how you communicate, and how present you are in the moment. If you're someone who wants to improve your intimate life, the best investment you can make is not comparison. It's education, communication, and self-care. Physical health, mental health, and emotional health all play a role. Sleep, stress management, exercise, and open conversation matter far more than measurements. And finally, let me say this as clearly as possible. If someone makes you feel inadequate based on a single physical trait, that's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of misinformation. Healthy attraction is holistic. It sees the whole person, not a statistic. So take a breath, let go of the myths, trust the science, and focus on becoming the healthiest, most confident version of yourself, because that is what actually makes a difference. If this video helped clear up some of the confusion, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, real confidence starts with understanding the truth, not chasing an illusion.